Imagine walking into a restaurant, right? And the main course has just completely doubled in price.
Yeah, which is a brutal feeling.
Right. So you are staring at the menu in absolute shock, and the waiter walks up and says, "Hey, good news, dessert is free."
Like it somehow makes up for it.
Exactly. I mean, that is exactly what buying a car feels like right now. The price of the vehicle itself has just exploded, but because gas prices are dropping, people, they kind of think they're catching a break. Welcome to Auto News Talk. If you look at the automotive landscape, you are watching this massive high-stakes collision happening in real time. It is a collision between sky-high vehicle costs, a desperate need for trust at the dealership, and, well, the double-edged sword of advanced car tech. And you, the consumer, are caught right in the middle of it.
It really is a brutal landscape out there right now. I mean, think of what we are doing here today as tracing the modern vehicle life cycle from start to finish. We're going to map out the reality of just trying to get the keys in your hand, then step inside the dealership to see how sellers are scrambling to earn back your trust, and finally, look at how the advanced technology packed into these cars is completely reshaping both dealer profits and, honestly, human safety on the roads.
Yeah, let's start with the wallet, because that is where the pain is sharpest right now. There is a massive, and I think often misunderstood, difference between the cost of driving a car and the cost of owning a car.
Oh, absolutely.
I mentioned that restaurant analogy earlier, but honestly, seeing gas prices drop below $4 a gallon and thinking your car problems are solved is an illusion. Sure, the free dessert is nice, but it doesn't fix the bill.
It doesn't even make a dent in the bill, really. There is an analysis from Cox Automotive that looks specifically at this dynamic, comparing fuel costs against high vehicle payments. And their central insight is exactly what you just described. Lower gas prices offer a tiny bit of operational relief, but they do absolutely nothing to solve the larger auto affordability crisis.
I do have to push back just a little, though. I mean, if you have a 50-mile commute, a drop in gas prices is real money back in your pocket. Doesn't that free up room in the budget?
Well, yeah, it frees up a little room. But the Cox Automotive data shows that higher vehicle prices and elevated interest rates are the true barriers here. When you calculate the total cost of ownership, that fuel savings is completely eclipsed by the financing costs.
Right.
The real bottlenecks keeping people out of cars are purchase prices, down payment requirements, and staggering monthly loan rates. The operating costs just aren't the main hurdle.
Because it really doesn't matter if gas is $2 a gallon if the bank won't approve you for the auto loan in the first place.
Precisely. And what's fascinating about the broader market is the split in behavior. The new vehicle sales market is surprisingly resilient right now.
Really, despite the costs?
Yeah, despite the massive affordability concerns, a certain segment of buyers is still purchasing new cars. But the used vehicle market is where the pressure is really boiling over. Used vehicle prices are incredibly elevated, which is severely squeezing budget shoppers.
And I imagine that isn't just about the sticker price on the windshield. It's the entire economic backdrop, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Cox report points out that you have to factor in broader economic signals. You've got the health of the labor market, Federal Reserve policy keeping rates high, and a tightening subprime lending market. All of these factors interact. It just shows how incredibly sensitive this entire ecosystem is to credit costs.
So the actual entry fee to get a car is basically locked behind a massive wall of interest. But the lingering question I have is how long can consumers actually sustain these high monthly payments before that resilient demand on the new car side finally breaks?
Yeah, that is the multi-billion-dollar question the industry is sweating over. And it leads directly into the psychology of the buyer. Because if the math is this punishing, the pressure on the consumer, and by extension, the dealership trying to close a sale, must be immense.
Which makes me wonder about the people who are actually out there shopping right now. If buyers are this squeezed financially, are they even shopping for cars they want? Or are they just desperately searching for whatever they can get approved for?
It is overwhelmingly the latter, and the data is frankly a little heartbreaking. A separate study by Cox Automotive focused specifically on independent dealers, and it paints a really stark picture.
What did they find?
The central insight is that these independent dealers have to prioritize trust, speed, and digital transparency above all else, because their buyers are shopping out of sheer financial necessity, not aspiration.
So they aren't out there looking for, a dream car. They are looking for a lifeline. Their transmission blew, or they got a new job across town, and they just need wheels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To put this in perspective, the Cox Automotive report highlighted a staggering statistic. 79% of these buyers said they needed a vehicle rather than wanted one.
Wow.
Yeah, and it gets tougher. Among those buying older cars, so vehicles in the 11 to 20-year-old range, 77% of them have a household income below $75,000.
Man, so you have major long-term financial decisions happening under urgent, highly stressful circumstances. How does a person even navigate that kind of pressure?
By doing an exhausting amount of homework. The data shows these buyers spend an average of 16 and a half hours researching online.
16 and a half hours?
Yeah, they are visiting over 5 different websites before they ever set foot on a physical lot.
Wait, if they're spending 16 and a half hours researching, what are they actually looking at? Because if you were just buying a 15-year-old sedan out of necessity, you aren't agonizing over leather versus cloth seats, you know?
You're right, they aren't. They are hunting for financing. They're running loan calculators, looking for bad credit approvals, and trying to find a dealer who won't hit them with hidden fees. In fact, 83% of these buyers start the entire process without even knowing what vehicle they want.
83%. That perfectly explains why trust is the ultimate currency here. If you are that financially vulnerable, your biggest fear is being taken advantage of in the finance office.
And right now, the industry is operating at a massive trust deficit. The study found that only 21% of these respondents said they would return to the same dealer.
Just 21%.
Think about that churn. Trust is the actual barrier to closing sales, not just the sticker price. Buyers want clear pricing, upfront vehicle history, and fast response times.
But looking at this practically, who is actually paying to upgrade these independent dealers' websites to offer this kind of Amazon-level transparency? That level of digital merchandising requires a serious financial investment, and I'm not sure a small corner lot dealer has the capital for that.
Right, and that is a major limitation of the findings. The data tells us what buyers demand, but what this doesn't answer is the financial reality of how these smaller independent lots are supposed to fund that digital overhaul.
Well, if digital transparency is tough, physical transparency might be the workaround. Because if proving a car's history is the key to building trust, dealers need better tools to provide that proof the absolute second a car rolls onto the lot or into the service bay. Let's build an analogy here. It's kind of like going to a new doctor.
Right. You don't want the doctor to just look at you, guess your symptoms, and write a prescription.
Exactly. You want them walking into the exam room with your entire medical history already loaded up on a tablet. You want them to know your baseline before they even ask a single question.
And that is the exact kind of transparency we are starting to see emerge in the auto service world. There is a major integration happening between a company called UVI and Carfax. The central insight here is that when you combine automated physical scans of a vehicle with its historical data, you give both the dealership and the consumer instant, transparent, undeniable proof of the car's health.
I've read a bit about UVI, but break down how that actually works for the listener, because they use computer vision, right?
Right.
How does that translate to a mechanic's garage?
Think of it as a high-tech drive-through MRI for your car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. As you pull into the service lane, UVI's platform uses automated computer vision cameras to physically inspect the vehicle in seconds. It scans the tire tread depth, checks the underbody for leaks or rust, and scans the exterior for anomalies.
Okay, so that is the physical scan, and then Carfax brings the medical history to the tablet.
Exactly. The Carfax integration adds all the historical maintenance data, prior service records, and open recall information. So instead of a service advisor having to toggle between 3 different software systems to figure out what's going on with your car, this combined workflow puts everything in one single place. It helps appraisers and service staff make much faster, highly informed decisions.
That completely flips the dynamic of trust. Let's say I bring my car in and the mechanic says, hey, you need new brakes. Historically, I just have to take their word for it, which always feels awful. But with this, they can spin the tablet around and show me a high-resolution, objective scan of my brake line right next to the Carfax report showing I haven't replaced them in 60,000 miles.
It takes the guesswork and, more importantly, the suspicion right out of the equation. It's hard evidence. And the scale of this adoption is massive. In the announcement of this integration, it was noted that UVI systems are currently scanning more than 3 million vehicles every single month globally.
3 million a month. That's incredible.
It is. This technology gives the dealership staff the hard evidence they need to explain maintenance or justify appraisal values.
It bridges the trust gap because the machine is the bad guy, not the mechanic. But again, hardware like a drive-through scanner rig does not come cheap. The
Okay.
catch here is overhead. Is this system too expensive for the average dealership to actually implement?
That is the catch. The integration sounds perfect on paper, but what this doesn't answer is the financial cost of installing those massive physical scanners across thousands of dealerships. It's a serious barrier that isn't fully resolved yet.
All right, so we've looked at the technology scanning the cars to build trust. Let's pivot to the technology actually powering the cars. Because the vehicles themselves are changing rapidly, and dealer profit margins are shifting based on what buyers actually trust on the open road. I mean, if you read any tech blog, you would assume pure electric vehicles, pure EVs, are the undisputed, highly profitable future of the market.
That is definitely the dominant narrative.
Yeah.
But if you look at the actual profit data from the used car market, the answer is radically different.
Wait, really? Because it feels like every automaker is betting the farm on pure EVs right now?
They are, but the secondary market is telling a completely different story. According to dealer auction data, which was cited by Motor Trader, used car dealers are finding their absolute biggest electrified profit margins not in pure EVs, but in hybrid vehicles.
Hybrids are taking the crown for margins. By how much?
By a massive amount. The dealer auction data showed that the hybrid Volvo XC60 delivered the highest dealer margin with a massive 5,605-pound markup.
Over 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, and the second place went to another hybrid, the Volvo XC40, sitting at a 4,901-pound margin.
Those are staggering returns on used vehicles. Before we go further, you are quoting pounds, so this is UK data. The report mentions volume and CKP rankings. For the listener who doesn't work in the British auto trade, what exactly is a CIP ranking?
Great point to clarify. CAP is essentially the UK industry's gold standard benchmark for vehicle valuations. It tracks what cars are actually worth in the trade versus what they eventually sell for. And when you look at those volume and CAP rankings, pure EVs are lagging significantly behind.
So where do the pure electrics even show up on these lists?
Barely making a dent. The Jaguar I-Pace was the only pure EV to place high in the margin rankings, coming in third. And looking at the sheer volume of sales, the Nissan Leaf and the Renault Megane E-Tech were the only pure EVs that made any real showing. Everything else dominating the top 10 was a hybrid.
Why do you think that is? I mean, why is a dealer making $5,000 on a used hybrid Volvo while the EVs just sit there?
Brand strength and consumer confidence. The data highlights that Toyota and Lexus models featured incredibly strongly in the top 10 list. It proves that hybrid SUVs remain the most attractive, safe bet for dealers looking for strong returns. Consumers trust the legacy brands, and frankly, they trust the infrastructure of a hybrid more than a pure electric right now.
It makes total sense. A hybrid is the perfect middle ground. You get the environmental benefits and the fuel savings, but you don't have the range anxiety of staring at a battery meter while you are stuck in a blizzard. For a dealer, that makes it a highly liquid, highly desirable asset to have on the lot.
Exactly. But the context we are missing here is supply versus demand. What this doesn't answer is whether these margins are huge because there is an overwhelming organic consumer demand for hybrids, or if they are huge because manufacturers underproduced hybrids in their rush to build EVs, creating a massive shortage in the used supply chain.
That is a critical distinction. Scarcity drives price just as much as popularity. Okay, this brings us to a really intense climax of our journey. We have talked extensively about buyers needing to trust dealers and dealers trusting the profitability of hybrids. But here's where it gets dangerous. What happens when the driver trusts the vehicle's advanced technology too much and that trust is broken?
Yeah, this is where the integration of technology and human behavior stops being about profit margins and becomes a literal matter of life and death.
Think about driver assistance systems. We've all seen that person on the highway looking down at their phone, completely checked out, while their car magically keeps them perfectly centered in the lane. It's like the autopilot on a commercial plane.
Right?
The autopilot might be perfectly capable of flying the route, making adjustments, keeping the plane level, but the human pilot absolutely still has to be awake, in the seat, and paying attention. The problem is, the way car companies brand these systems often blurs that line for the average consumer.
And that blurred line is the exact focus of major federal scrutiny right now. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, is currently investigating a fatal crash that perfectly highlights the terrifying gap between what driver assistance tech can actually do and what human drivers are responsible for doing.
This is the crash in Katy, Texas, right?
Yes. NHTSA opened a special crash investigation after a Tesla Model 3 left its lane and struck a home, tragically killing a 76-year-old woman named Martha Avila. Now, the driver of the Tesla, Michael Butler, claims that the vehicle's driver assistance tech was engaged and in use at the time of the crash.
But Tesla's aggressively pushing back on that narrative.
Very aggressively. Elon Musk and Tesla's autopilot executive, Ashok Illaswamy, heavily dispute the driver's claim. They suggest that the accelerator was manually pressed by the driver, overriding any autonomous system.
And this gets right to the heart of human psychology meeting corporate branding. Tesla literally calls its system full self-driving. If you buy a product called full self-driving, human nature dictates you are going to let it drive. But then, in the fine print, they have to legally clarify what that actually means.
That is the friction point. Tesla explicitly states in its materials that its full self-driving, supervised software, does not make the vehicle autonomous, and it requires a fully attentive driver who is ready to take over at any moment. But the legal and regulatory stakes here are monumental. This is not an isolated inquiry.
It's not.
No, NHTSA has opened over 36 of these special investigations into Tesla crashes since 2016.
Wow, over 36. Because regulators are trying to figure out if the branding, the public statements, and the naming conventions are causing drivers to fundamentally overestimate the technology's actual capabilities in the real world. If the car does 99% of the work, our brains are hardwired to check out for that final 1%.
Precisely. It highlights the massive stakes surrounding how autonomous driving features are marketed versus how humans actually interact with them when they get behind the wheel. However, we have to be clear that what this doesn't answer is the final verdict of what actually caused this specific crash in Texas. The conflicting accounts are still unverified while the federal investigation is ongoing.
So, we have covered an immense amount of ground. We started with the sheer financial gravity of getting a car loan, moved into the high-stress psychology of the dealership lot, and ended on the bleeding edge of automotive safety tech. When you look at all this evidence together, how do you synthesize it?
When I look at all this, 3 distinct themes keep coming up across all our sources. First, affordability is driving severe consumer stress and fundamentally altering buyer behavior. We saw that clearly in both the Cox Automotive data on financing barriers and their study on independent dealers.
Right. The financial squeeze is forcing people to treat buying a car like a desperate necessity, not a choice.
Exactly. The pressure is entirely dictating the market. The second theme is that trust and transparency are the ultimate currencies in the auto market right now. The Cox study showed how fast financially stressed buyers will abandon a dealer they don't trust. And the UVI and Carfax integration proves that the industry is relying on hard, objective, technological evidence to rebuild that trust in the service lane.
Yeah, it's very much a show me the physical scan, show me the history report, don't just ask me to believe you kind of world.
Completely. And the third theme is the incredibly complex reality of vehicle technology on the ground. The dealer auction hybrid margins and the NHTSA Tesla investigation both illustrate that while we love the futuristic idea of advanced technology, the real-world application is much messier, both financially and legally.
And there's some fascinating tensions buried in all this data, too.
Yes, 2 major contradictions really stand out to me. First, there's the tension from the first Cox source between dropping operating costs like cheap gas and paralyzing ownership costs like high loan rates. It creates a complete illusion of affordability.
Yep, the free dessert.
Exactly. And the second tension is between the futuristic promise of self-driving pure EVs, which we see heavily scrutinized in the NHTSA Tesla source, versus the reality that both consumers and dealers still vastly prefer the safety, familiarity, and profitability of traditional hybrids, as proven by the dealer auction source.
It really is a massive pull between the utopian future we're being promised by tech companies and the grounded financial reality we actually live in today.
So for the listener navigating all of this, the ultimate practical takeaway is simple. Transparency is absolutely non-negotiable. Whether you are buying a 15-year-old used car, financing a new one, or deciding whether to trust a driver assistance feature on the highway, you have to read the fine print. Demand the vehicle history report. Understand your loan terms. The technology and the financial markets are moving way too fast for you to operate on blind trust anymore.
You really have to be your own loudest advocate out there. Thank you for walking us through that incredibly complex terrain. This has been Auto News Talk. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final philosophical thought to mull over. As cars become more and more like rolling computers packed with software and automated systems, are we actually buying a mode of transportation anymore? Or are we really just financing a massive software subscription on wheels? Keep an eye on how those dealer transparency tools evolve the next time you step into a service lane. We'll see you next time.